Thanks for attending my session at the APAC Food Safety Conference in Sydney. I thought I'd do a quick video just to do a recap of the session for those who wanted to revisit the LinkedIn goodness that we shared. So I'm Jo Saunders, as you see. Now we talked about the power of personal branding and the fact that your brand is what others say about you when you're not in the room. But now the room is not just the physical room, it's the digital space. And you've got to think about how you're representing yourself and your organization when it comes to your online presence. So think about your brand. You've got your company, how your company expresses itself. You've got how the individual, the employees, behave in response to that. And then, of course, how your stakeholder, your customer, sees you. So what impression you're making on them. So are you individually delivering on your brand promise? Is your company making a brand promise? And is your company enabling and empowering individuals to build that personal brand? And the enable and empower comes from training, comes from having guidelines, comes from having some sort of direction. So having someone like me come into your organization to train your staff, to create some guidelines around how to represent yourself, some in terms of your profile, and in terms of content and engagement. It's really important because first impressions count. And we're not just looking at what our web presence anymore. It's all of our social media tools that will build that online footprint. So like I said, it's not where people are talking about you physically in a room anymore. It's where they're talking about you online. You know, are they talking about your brand on Twitter? Are they talking about you on Facebook? And are they talking about you on LinkedIn? Now, LinkedIn, you've got a lot of influence in terms of what you put out there and how much you're seen particularly within Google because of the power. So as we mentioned, I'm Jo Saunders, a LinkedIn expert and specialist. I've been doing this for about 10 years now. And I'm independent to LinkedIn. I make it my business to keep up to speed with LinkedIn. I do a lot of my own testing and I have a lot of colleagues in the LinkedIn space and we knowledge share and troubleshoot to keep up to speed as well. We used the app at the conference and we had the hashtag. So if you missed some of the sessions or you weren't, you weren't keeping up, because we don't necessarily look at the online space while we're in a conference. But if you search for the hashtag in the search bar at the very top in LinkedIn, you will see people talking about that particular hashtag, just as a side note. So LinkedIn, it is the most powerful and biggest professional network, social network, I should say. But not just that, it's the stats that are relevant, which, the engagement, the monthly use, the daily use. And it's not such a time suck like some of the platforms are. Facebook, you can get lost in, particularly for personal. But LinkedIn's about your professional. It's about your career. It's about your brand. So you don't need to spend a lot of time in it and, to get the biggest results. But you want to make sure that when people are talking about you, they're saying someone needs to speak to you or your organization, you want to make sure that your team and your own profiles are representing you and your organization well. Are your team showcasing their talents? Do they represent their values as well as the company values? Does it establish the credibility of your team? Does it share their vision and your company vision? And do they show up in search? Because people are searching Google. LinkedIn gives you visibility. It allows you to build authority and to gain influence by using it in the right way. So LinkedIn is one of the top sites that Google crawls because of the power of LinkedIn and the way that it's used. So if you do a search for your name, your LinkedIn profile potentially will be ranking quite highly. Now, it depends if you're competing with someone who's very out there and active or someone who's a celebrity. Obviously, that's going to be hard to compete with them. But you've got the ability to build a footprint and it gives you that competitive advantage. But when someone finds you, you want to make sure your profile represents you well. It's up to date, communicates your value, creates the right impression, it captures the right attention, and it communicates your brand. So we went through the 4 steps to LinkedIn mastery. Creating your character, which is your profile. Building a network of connections. Establishing thought leadership through content. And creating community through engaging with your network. So when you want to build your personal brand, you want to get clear on what your personal values are, and they will intersect with your company values. Where your vision is, like where are you going, what are you looking to achieve, and what your voice is. So how conservative are you going to be? How controversial will you be? Are you fairly conversational in your language? Or are you quite technical? Are you using lots of big words that are relevant to your industry? It comes down to knowing your audience, who they are, but also how do you speak? Write as you speak. That's the best way for people to get to know you and get to build a connection with you, because that will showcase your personality, and you get to share your passion and purpose through your voice. You want to share your expertise, which is your backstory, and you want to be clear about your stakeholders or clients, what problems do they have and what outcomes do you provide them. Now, we had a quick volunteer to wear a bag on their head to make a point that when your profile doesn't have a photo or the right photo and it lacks personality, then you may as well network with a bag on your head, because people connect with people. So in terms of your profile, we went through the 5 areas. So number 1, visuals. So having that photo that's up to date, professional, looks like you. A background image to communicate more, whether it's your company, whether it's about yourself, a bit of branding. The copy in the right places. So getting your headline right, that bit of text under your name that follows you everywhere. It's a positioning statement. It needs to have the right keywords in it, but it needs to clarify what you do beyond your job title, particularly if you've got a job title like director or consultant or even business owner. Something vague. CEO, you want to have the context. You want to have your company name in there if it's relevant as well. Telling your story to share your credibility and share your purpose. So use the about section to tell that story. Where have you come from? What difference are you trying to make? Why do you do what you do? Your experience will amplify your expertise. So share what you do in your role. Why does your company exist? What do you do there? And I mentioned before about the title in experience that shows up next to your name in Google when people are looking for you. So make sure you get your title right rather than that vague title. Number 3 is media. So having some visuals, having links to videos, and your organization might have some PDF documents or promotional videos or stories or newspaper pieces, media items that you can put in here. And then you want to have some social proof in your profile. So having the right skills, which people can endorse you for. Having recommendations that for people saying that you can do what you do. You want to have at least 2 if you can. And you want to keep them recent. So you can't just keep removing them, and you can't add them. You have to ask them from people. So if you haven't got any, think about 2 people now that you could ask, or maybe just 1 person to get started, just so you've got something. Add some accomplishments. So that's things like professional associations. Have you published a paper, a book? Have you been interviewed? Projects you've worked on, languages you speak. That just adds a bit of extra. And then 5 is your activity. Now, the articles and activity section gives that context to who you are, what do you care about, what are you passionate about. It shows me what you're a thought leader in, what you're a subject matter expert in by the articles you're sharing and the content you're publishing, but also how you're engaging with your network. What views do you have? And that will share your influence. You want to make sure that your contact info is up to date, and decide if your connections, if you'd like your connections to see who you're connected to, or do you want to keep it quite closed? So I keep mine locked down, so you'll only see the people we have in common. You can't see my entire connections, and it's going to come down to your own connection strategy. We talked about the power of network on LinkedIn, and this is one of the things that it sort of has over and above the other platforms. So you have your connections, which are your first level connections. They have their connections that become your second level connections. And those people have their connections, which become your third level. So it works in 3 degrees deep. And the reason it's important is when you share content on LinkedIn or engage with content, you're exposing it to potentially, depending on the algorithm, to your connections. If they engage with the content, they're exposing it to their connections, and so it goes on. So it's really important to just remember where you are when you are engaging and sharing content, because people can see it, but you want to engage the right people so that they spread the word, they give you more visibility from your content. And some of the types of people you might want to connect to, so your ideal clients or stakeholders, influencers of them, so they're the people sitting at the second degree from you in that map. Strategic partners, authorities and leaders in your space, so who's speaking at conferences, who's publishing papers, who's doing the research, colleagues in your organisation, potentially students who might be interested in coming into your industry, potential talent, mentors, mentees, and there's probably many others in your field, but that's just to give you an idea. Now, I mentioned when you're connecting, particularly on the mobile app, you want to introduce yourself and tell people why you're connecting or where you met them. So rather than hitting the connect button, hit the more option and then go to personalize and then put in your message. Now you're telling your future self how you know a person, but you're also telling that person how you know them as well. And it's good manners. So your content, here's some things that you could be sharing in relation to the conference. So you could be sharing photos. You might even share a video. You might reflect on the conference post-event. Now a few days have gone by. What were the takeaways from the speakers? What did you learn? What could you share? Use the hashtag to anchor the message and to add to the conversations. And mention the people involved. So the speakers that you're referencing, the people in the photos, people you met, or the organisers. And you want to think about how you can encourage people to engage with you or encourage engagement within your community and sharing the message. And the way people can interact is they can like or react, they can comment or they can share. But the power is in the commenting. So you want to write in a way that's conversational and incite conversation rather than just sharing your thoughts. So for instance, if you're doing a post about the conference and sharing your reflections, your takeaways, you could list them, but if you ask a question at the end, get people thinking, you're actually now inviting engagement from people. And the other thing you can do is publish an article. So that could also be a reflection piece, talking about your industry, but think about any other papers that you've had published or any interviews you've done. How can you repurpose that into an article? I mentioned make sure you follow your company page and make sure you follow the SAI Global page, because that way you get updates. And you're telling LinkedIn that you're interested in this particular industry and this particular company. So think about which companies you should be following. And this just brings together how the company page works. So often company pages publish content and the staff are connected to the company page and then therefore become followers of the page. And the page also has individuals who are followers. So every time the company publishes, depending on the algorithm, the people following the page in the red circle will see that content. Now, if they engage with it, if they comment on the content, their first level connections may see the update. Now, if they decide to comment on it, they're exposing it to their first degree connections, which are 2 degrees away from the followers of the page. And the reason you want to engage your staff as an organisation is employees tend to have 10 times more connections than company pages have followers. So, and if you think about it, people connect to people. So the message can come from a company, and there are definitely benefits for using a company page, but trying to engage your team for employees as advocates and ambassadors is a great approach to take. We looked at the nearby feature, so how we can connect people in the room by using the My Network icon and then going to turn the nearby feature on. Of course, you need to make sure you turn it off as well. And I mentioned I do have a LinkedIn challenge that is completely free. You will find it on my LinkedIn profile. It's in the web area under the contact info. It's also on the experience section. I've actually got a role that has a link to the 7-day LinkedIn challenge. So you're welcome to sign up for that for free. But if you do need any help, you're very welcome to get in touch. I do organizational training. I do profile reviews. I do mentoring for individuals and teams. So if you need some help, certainly get in touch. If you want to get your profile reviewed, I look at your profile, I look at your activity, and we look at what's working for you right now, what you could start doing that's missing, the opportunities, and what to stop doing if it's not working as well. But feel free to get in touch with me and connect to me on LinkedIn. And I'd love to know what you enjoyed most about the session. But it's always great to get some questions. So if there's a question that you didn't get answered, feel free to get in touch with me as well. Thanks very much for watching this quick video, and look forward to staying in touch with you.